Okay, hello, hello, hello. I know the countdown had to do a little bit more so to finalize some things here. Hello, everyone. So good to be here with you. If you can hear me, if you can see me, say hello in the chat. Already see lots of people here in the chat. Danilo is saying here, hello, let's go, Danilo. Great to be here with you, man. Hello, hello, Luis. Hello, Ediel. Hi, everyone. Says Ediel. Andres. Hi there, Andres. Looking forward to this talk, right? Okay, no problem. That's great. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I want to see. So we are streaming this to lots of different places, right? To Facebook, to LinkedIn, to YouTube, right? And we are streaming to my channels, to So Java channels, right? So it's an honor to be here representing So Java, right? So says Daniel there. Hey, Thiago, that's great to see Thiago here and Anderson. So good to see you here, Anderson. All right, so have lots of people. So I want you guys to send in lots and lots of questions. It's an amazing opportunity here to be with this guy, this amazing guy. And I'm just gonna, without too much talking, let me bring him here, right? So he is a director of engineering from Nubank. Let me get here, Thiago Ghisi. Oops.
Thank you, Bruno. Really appreciate it, man. It's a
And the
pleasure to
internet
be here.
vibrates for Thiago. Hey, Thiago. So good to be here with you, man. So Thiago is a
Same.
director of engineer at Nubank. He has been a staff plus engineer at Apple, at ThoughtWorks, at Amex, right? And one of the cool things that I was talking to Thiago a couple of weeks ago, and one of the cool things that he was telling me is that not only he has been a staff plus professional, but he has hired many staff plus to all those companies that he worked for, and he even mentored people from those companies to grow, senior developers to grow on to become a staff plus. So that's exactly what we need to hear, right, Thiago? That's exactly what all of us want to know: how to do this, how to grow, how to be hired as a staff plus, how to become a staff plus. And it's an amazing to have you here to tell us all about that. Man, thanks a lot for the opportunity to have you here, man.
Thank you, Bruno. I'm the one thanking you because it's a pleasure to be speaking to your community and to have a chance to present a presentation I gave a couple of weeks ago, almost a month back in Boston. So I made some updates for the live today, and there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I hope you guys enjoy.
That's great. Actually, this is an official transmission for So Java. So let me put the So Java logo here in the corner, right? So Java is the largest Brazilian Java group, right? And it's an honor for the group to host you and to be here with you and present that to our community. And there's it's actually let me start with like a question, just a little bit of a discussion here, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing lots and lots of things in your career, and you've worked with many languages. But if we think of only about Java, right? So we're here on So Java. If you think only about Java, Java is almost 30 years old now, right? So 20, 29, 28, 29 years old. And technology like this, right? Is that you have many people that have been start working with Java in the early 2000s, for example. So they have about 20, some have 25 years of career. Isn't that the perfect, like a professional like 15, 20 years of career? Isn't that the perfect professional to be a staff plus engineer?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, I started my career working with Java, and
Yeah.
I felt that was the early days, but it was already kind of like 10 plus years into the language, and that
Mhm.
was kind of like when Java was at its peak. I would say 2006, 2007, right? It was
Right.
not that early, but 100%. I think like there is one part of my talk where I talk about this idea of the 40-year career, right? And
Mhm.
like most of us will be working for usually that long, right? And it's great to have a language that has been
Mhm.
following and being there since the beginning of our careers for most of us. And I know you, Bruno, you have been remarkable on that, right? Being the Java guy, the Java man in Brazil, and
Thank you.
following like most of those 25 plus years of Java. So yeah, I think it's at the same time, I think it's interesting to know how kind of like a lot of the ideas from Java actually spread on the ecosystem, and how it's like much easier
Mhm.
for many of us to kind of switch language, switch context, like leverage JVM for things beyond Java, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. And and we gotta think about that, right? Because as you're talking about, the 40 years career, right? And I was, for me, something that happened not long ago, just a few weeks ago. There was like a really landmark moment, right? Is that James got so he announced his retirement
Yes.
just about a month ago, and and I was thinking about that, getting his age. So he was about 40 years old when he released Java, right? And I think that's an important thing, because when we get to that level, that you are 10, 15, maybe 20 years of your career, you're about that, right? You're between 30 and 40, right? And so it gets and I think that you have enough experience, right? Because you've working on many different things. You have you have experiments, all kinds of different technologies, different projects, and you're ready to actually do the next 20 years of your career, right? You're ready to actually move forward and do the next 20 years. And for me, that's what I see, Thiago. Let me tell you what you think. That's what I see. That's a great moment for us to transition into a more responsibility, more impact, right? More future looking kind of things. And for me, that's what I see the staff plus position being, right? More impact,
Yes.
more autonomy, right? So and
Yes. Yes.
yep.
That's, I mean, totally related, man, because like I think like, and I'll talk about this on the talk, but like I see folks that have just started like 5, 7 years of experience, and they try to like quickly like jump into a staff position. And we have this info of James Gosling like kind of like being the one that started Java when he was 40 years old, right? Like
Mm,
after like probably 20 years on his career, right?
yeah.
And now
Yeah.
he's retiring after like 20 plus years. So it's like it is the perfect moment to transition. And I think like the other thing is you have to leave, you have to see kind of like many cycles, you have to be doing working with different languages, and to be able to operate at that level. And I mean, I gotta explain why kind of like the core expectations and why it's so hard to get there and to stay there.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so I see more people join us here. I see Gerson. Hey Gerson, how you doing? Raimundo is also here. Hey Raimundo. Lucas. Hey Lucas, good to have you here. Lucas Arruda. Lucas actually is doing a great job of mentoring developers for the international career. So hey Lucas, good to see you here. Laura. Hello Laura. Great to be here with you. So lots and lots of people here saying hello. And let me tell you, the first guy to send a message here is Danilo. He said, let's go. So here's an interesting thing. Danilo is one of the leaders, one of the coordinators of Java Campinas, right? And so if you are from the Campinas region, next week, next Tuesday on the 13th, I'm going to be there in Campinas to discuss what? To discuss the path of growing beyond senior, right? So I'm gonna learn here from Thiago and gonna teach you guys next week. That's gonna be awesome. All right, so Thiago, without further ado, man, look, good to be here, says Lucas. So if anyone has any questions, right? So you send me the questions. I'll be here with Thiago, and we can get started. So Thiago, without further ado, let's just put your presentation here. How about we just get started, right? So Chagas, the stage is yours, man.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me share my screen for a
It's,
second.
it's, it's sharing here. Okay, cool. All right. Yes.
Amazing.
Perfect.
So, hello, folks. Good evening. So, I want to say again, it's a great pleasure to be here doing this live along with Bruno, along with the Soul Java community. As I said, I actually started my career in Java, so it's a huge pleasure to be able to present back to this community, even though last, let's say, 10 years or so, I have not been working mainly with Java. I have been working with other languages, other technologies, but I still have that kind of like deep love of Java when it started and was the first language that I actually got to be super fluent on and super productive on. So I think we all have that language, and I'm pretty sure you all have at some point. So I'm really excited to show
Amazing.
you today breaking the ceiling. That's basically everything that I have to show you today is about how to break through to the staff plus level and beyond, or as Bruno was saying, kind of like senior and above, right? So let me go over. So a quick intro, and I think like some extra context that might be relevant to you all here is I'm director of engineering now, and I think a question that many of you might be asking is why do we have a director of engineering presenting about growth beyond senior, right? And I think like the perspective I want to bring to the table here is almost an external perspective. It's the perspective of someone that has, as Bruno said, helped many others go from senior to staff, have been managing staff, but more than that, someone that has been on a lot of performance calibrations, a lot of like hiring calls, like leveling discussions about bringing someone as a staff or as a senior or as a principal engineer, right? So what I want to present here and a little bit of some numbers of like how many interviews I have done, how many orgs I have helped to grow, because this will give you an idea why I'm saying the things that I'm saying. So a lot of this is like context that you usually are not going to find, let's say, clearly in books. It's like more compiling my experience being on the other side of the dual track career ladder, right? And the next thing I want to say is the following opinions and perspectives we're going to share here are mine and mine alone and do not represent necessarily the views of my employer. So just want to start with that. And then I think like the biggest lesson and the major takeaway that I want you to get at the end of the talk, and I hope I'm able to prove this point, is what got you here won't necessarily get you there. What I mean by that is what made you grow from junior to mid-level to senior is not necessarily what's going to make you one break the senior level and go to staff, and also to staff and beyond, right? Staff, senior staff, principal, even distinguished engineer. If you actually are able to kind of like make an impact almost at the industry level, right? So let's jump into that. So here is the agenda for today. So first, I'm going to talk about career ladders. So basically, what is there, right? What are the core expectations for staff plus across companies? Second, I'm going to talk about the idea of the transformational leaps. That's more kind of like what are the behaviors that I have seen that actually what are the patterns of behaviors that help to accelerate some promotions, and also the opposite, what are the patterns of behavior and things that I have seen engineers ICs doing that actually hold them back, right? So we're going to see like if number one is the what are the core expectations, number two is the how. It's like how to get there, what are the behavior, what are the things that you're able to do to accelerate those things. And staff projects is then the connection of the two. It's like, how do you connect the core expectations of staff plus level to something that, to how you do that, but it's like not only how you break through this, but how you keep that going forever and ever. So I'm gonna be talking about expectation setting, the idea of expectations calibration, and the idea of like be continuously reviewing what you're doing and the impact of everything you are planning. And then at the end, we're gonna go over Q&A. So let's jump in career ladders. So as we have a lot of folks on the chat, I actually want to ask this question. Do you have staff plus levels at your company? What I mean by that is at your company career ladder, do you have staff plus level? Do you have people that actually have the staff engineer, senior staff, principal engineer titles at your company? Let me stop sharing for a second. I would love to see some answers there on the chat. Let me see. Just so I know kind of like how many of you already have that in your official company career ladder?
Yeah, let's take a look here. So why people come on guys, tell us, do you have in your company or not, so we can have an idea. So why are people doing here? I forgot to mention one thing about Thiago, right? So while they're answering, let me just say that Thiago also has a podcast, right? There's called Engineering Advice You Didn't Ask For, right? So if you're interested in following Thiago's on his podcast, I'm gonna put this link a little bit over also. But here's the QR code,
Yeah.
so you guys can take a look. Right, let me put here on the side why we take this poll. So we say here, Otoniel says no, that he doesn't have. Lucas says yes, he does. So I know that Lucas is
So it's
working.
almost half and a half.
Yes, right. Yeah. So Luis Felipe about Absalom is saying yes. Principal engineer, that's the position, his position, or the position that his company have, right? And so why people are answering, Thiago, is that a position for only for the really big companies, or even the small companies have that?
So that's a great question. Actually, I would say, like, if we're going back in like 5 years ago, I would say it would be mostly big companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
if you would go like farther back, maybe 10 years ago, and you can actually be an interesting data point on that. I don't remember seeing many companies having staff plus titles like 10 years ago. I think, of course, there were the IBMs, the Suns, and they
Yeah.
had the Oracles they had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think like recently, I would say this year,
Mm-hmm.
2024, I would say that if a company has more than, let's say, 50 engineers, usually is a point where a lot of companies start to create career ladders, because is where folks start to kind of like expect some career growth. I think early stage startups, they usually don't have titles, they don't even have career
Yes.
ladders, right?
Yeah.
But like I think like if it is a tech company and if you have, let's say, more than 100, more than 500 engineers, for sure you have some career ladders. And some of those companies might have still the old fashioned kind of like junior, mid-level, and senior, and you die as senior, right? Or you become a manager. But I want to introduce the idea of the dual track career ladder. That is where we started seeing both on the management track, on the staff or IC track, this kind of like idea of the levels start to be more material, more concrete, right? But
Right.
based on the answers there, I think I already got what I'm seeing, kind of like almost like, let's say,
Yes.
60-40.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
like
yes,
some of
there's
those.
that his company has, but with other names. I think that's something that's very common, right? So different, the nomenclature is not very standardized, right? So, and Igor says no. Yeah. So you have like, I agree with you. Like 60% of people here have some, and the others don't. All right.
Yeah, and I would say usually the larger the company, the more likely you will to have some career ladder, and by design, some staff plus level. Okay, let me share again, and we'll
Yes.
continue. But I think I got some data point that might be interesting. Okay, so I think the answer is like 6.
Let me
Go
just
for it.
remove this. I just remove the QR code from here. Okay, so yes, back to you, man.
Okay, all right. So with that data in mind, now I can try to tailor a little bit the presentation further. Okay, so I think the number one question that I get, especially for more junior engineers, is what does it mean to be a staff plus, right? Or like, I get a lot of like those comments like, Ghisi, I don't understand what are the expectations to get to staff plus, or what staffs do on the day to day. What it means to be a good staff engineer, right? What it means to be a bad staff engineer. I heard about the different archetypes. Like I get a lot of those comments. So in order to answer that, right, what does it mean to be staff, and what are the core expectations for staff? I need to kind of like go back in history for a little bit. So I think Bruno will definitely remember this more than I do. I'm not that. I don't have as a long career as much as Bruno, but I have been close to 20 years in tech. And I still remember companies that had this idea of the career ladder that was basically you would become juniors, mid-level, right, and then senior. And then there was a terminal level. Senior was like the last title you would have. You could like die as a senior engineer, or you would have to kind of like move and become a manager, right? And then as manager, you could maybe progress further, right? There was this idea that kind of in order to grow and to have more impact, you have to become a manager. But then, and I don't know exactly when, but my guess is in my research is like about 10 to 15 years back, this became very popular. The idea of the dual track career ladder model. That is basically not only you can keep growing forever as a IC, as an individual contributor, but there is almost equivalence of like the IC level with the managerial level, right? So, and you can be almost like executive, but still not have any people management responsibilities. Is idea that I think has helped a lot of companies to retain talent, a lot of engineers to keep them motivated to have more and more impact. It was a win-win to everybody, right? So I think that was fantastic. And I think even though we are talking about the IC ladder as a staff engineer, I think that brought a lot more clarity to the engineering management ladder as well. Because 10, 15 years back, even the engineering management, senior engineer manager, director of engineer, they're really kind of fuzzy, really like hard to materialize what it means to be an engineering manager, what it means to be a senior engineering manager. But now with the dual track and with the levels being more defined and that be more popular across the industry, it became like more professional on both sides. And so the thing for me that I think like the first, I would say, expectation of a staff engineer, and that's why I said that kind of like usually you start to need a staff engineer when your company reach more or less like 50 engineers, like some companies 100, because those are going to be the people, those are going to be the engineers that they're not going to be working on a single project or on a single isolated code base. They're usually going to be working, what I circulate here, on multiple projects, like doing like almost like the cross architecture, the cross coordination. They're going to be the ones like seeing things technically, what are the stacks we're using, how are we kind of like trying to materialize the business impact, right? So I think like the main thing is, so if there is a transition from going to senior to staff, which is common in most companies, that you stop looking you stop being part of a single, let's say, cross-functional team, and you start to be looking at least two, if not three other groups that maintain multiple projects, multiple feature, like multiple areas of the company, right? But of course, this vary, and there's the idea of different archetypes. But in general, I want you to stay with this idea that in order to become to staff, you start to be less deep on a single area and start to be more broad, but still deep in multiple areas that have almost the idea of like almost like a domain, or I think like on the domain driven design community, they have this idea of what is it, the bounded context, right? I think it's almost like that. It's the staff is someone that looks at the area that's their relationships and is the one that's overseeing the technical aspects, and we'll see it goes beyond being technical. So, but then I would say, is the question is like, is the dual track career ladder that we have in tech perfect? And or are there any problems with the dual track career ladders, or what are the things that most people still get wrong when they're first introduced with like the idea of the dual track? So I would say the first thing is I think those are important problems to keep in mind as we move to the expectation. So the first thing is that even though there is this idea of dual track, and there is at high level, at the industry level, there are some, would say, agreements. If we look across companies, the titles or the levels don't actually match, right? So if you look at this levels.fyi, there's an amazing website where they put salaries and like a lot of data about different companies, right? Even if you look at the big techs, you see that, like, for example, while like at Nubank, the company that I work for example, we have the IC7 staff engineer. The equivalent to that at Microsoft would be principal engineer. And if we go all the way to Google, it would be more like kind of like a mid between senior and staff. So it's like there is no perfect match, or if you are staff in one place, like you're going to be staff in another place. You might be principal, you might be still be senior. And there's like companies that have senior engineer one, senior engineer two that start to kind of like get into staff engineer territory. So I think that's one problem to keep in mind. And here is an example of like a company, like for example, Nubank, where we actually have a level in between, right? So just to give you an example, Nubank has this title called lead engineer that is a level between senior and staff, right? And of course, there are different definitions what lead engineer is, and some companies call this senior engineer one or senior engineer two. But I think this is important to keep in mind. And then the second thing that I want to like make sure you all get out of this live today is this idea that becoming a staff is not really a promotion, at least in my opinion. Is almost as doing a lateral move or doing it like it's almost like they say like when you go from senior to manager, you're not really being promoted. You're actually switching careers almost, right? You go from being a senior engineer to being a junior tech manager, right? And I actually talked about this a couple of years ago. Like, in my opinion, and that's my opinion, it's like when it comes to staff engineering, like the old saying, what got you here won't get you there, is so true, because like becoming a staff is completely different than actually becoming a better senior engineer. It's like it's not doing more of the same. It's not about being fast. It's about changing how you operate. It's about being able to delegate. It's about being able to influence the business. And once you go from senior engineer to staff, exactly the same thing happens. You go from being a senior engineer to being a junior staff engineer, because you need to, like, it's almost you're starting a new career again. So keep that in mind. So that's the problem number two. And I think the other thing that a lot of folks miss when they look at the dual track, they only look at the IC ladder. But another expectation, another anchor that we almost have is that there is an equivalence between the engineering management track and the staff engineer or the IC track. And once you become a staff, it's expected you have more or less the same scope of impact as the engineering manager. The same way, once you become a principal, you should have more or less the same level of responsibility, the same level of, even though you're not a people manager, not managing people directly, you should be impacting more or less the scope of a director, right? So it's like, it is something that's important to keep in mind, because a lot of folks miss that detail. The second thing is career ladders, and dual track career ladders are not exception. That is like, there are many hidden paths for growth that are not clear on the career ladder. And like, for example, in a lot of companies, and let me go over here, like the senior engineer level and the first tech manager level are exactly at the same level, right? And I don't think this is by accident. And I think this is an example of Google career ladder, is where once you become a senior engineer, I believe it's like L5, if I'm not mistaken. The first level, or the kind of like let's say people that are starting as managers are also L5. They're also at the same level. What it means is that there is opportunity, and if I go back to the previous slide, there is opportunity to have growth in so many ways that might not look like if you only look at the career ladder as it is, right? You might, for example, be like, you might actually play the tech lead role that in most companies is not a title and is not a level. You can play the tech lead role being a senior engineer or being staff. You can actually switch back and forth between being a tech manager and a senior engineer. You might actually switch like the stack you work or the language you work, right? And not all kinds of growth, sometimes crucial and important kind of growth that is going to be like instrumental for you to get this staff, are not really visible on the ladder. So a lot of folks they see growth as only if there is a title change or a level change. But you have to keep in mind that a lot of those things, like a lot of like different roles that you play, are sometimes more important than having a title change, because sometimes you learn more. Transition to be, let's say, the tech lead or to being the tech manager for a while in returning to a senior engineer, than having a kind of straight like career ladder progression, like on the traditional terms. So I think this is an important thing. And the beauty of this is a lot of folks miss this. A lot of folks, they don't understand this. So they try to materialize every single kind of growth as it needs to be on the career ladder. And the career ladders are not for that. And the third and the last thing about career ladders that I think is important for folks to be aware is there is a hidden dimension of time. What does that mean? That is not necessarily that because it took you 2 years, 3 years to be promoted from, let's say, intern to entry level to then to mid level, and then 5 years to senior, that you're gonna keep that same kind of like every 2 to 3 years have a promotion. When you get to staff territory, let's say, it takes a lot longer for you to materialize impact, and is not only a matter of time, it's a matter of it takes sometimes years for you to be able to materialize some of your impact, and there will be less and less positions at that level available, right? The same way that you don't have, let's say, two managers for one person, right? We cannot have, let's say, 10 staffs to like a small group of engineers. So, and if you actually look at some industry averages, right? I think this is important. You see that kind of like, this is like from levels at 4AI. You see that like it takes like 1 to 2 years to get from junior to mid level, then between 2 to 5, then 3 to 5, then 4 to 6. For the people that are actually able to keep being promoted and keep growing their careers, that's usually kind of like, even like at the higher levels, that's usually kind of like the average there. But I think there is one thing that is important to mention is this idea that not all progress can be measured. And the dimension of time, if you actually look for the people that were not promoted, for the people that like stayed on a level, you actually would be looking to something more like this, right? Where you actually like, and if you map that to the career ladder, being more realistic, you're actually talking about once after senior, it might take 4 to infinite amount of years for you to be promoted to that level, because senior engineer is not, there is no expectation in most companies, and there is like that once you become senior, you have to work to become a staff. It's like most companies are happy to have people as a senior engineer level, because that's where like the most need is in most cases, and there is a lot of growth. And like growth does not necessarily mean growth up on the career ladder. I think the same way that I think Bruno was saying that like James goes like launched Java when he was 40, right? Is like it takes a while for you to understand how to go from like being the one building software to then help organization make organizations that build software. And once you become a staff engineer, you actually become someone that you're not necessarily building software, you're helping to build orgs that build software, right? And I think at each level after senior, you get approximately like an order of magnitude harder to achieve, and an order of magnitude fewer engineers to hold that title. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that as it not only takes longer, it also there are less positions for you to get there. So I think those are the big three things that I want to leave as like part one. Is like when you talk about career ladders, is amazing where we got, right? The idea of the dual track, the idea that most companies are using a version of that is fantastic. But you have to keep in mind, if you really want to grow, is like that levels, titles, and expectations vary a lot, even though there's some standards. And sometimes if you obsess about getting the title, that's actually be more detrimental for your growth than if you actually obsess about mastering skills, playing different roles, right? The title will always come next. I think like this is important to keep in mind. Number two, there are many hidden possibilities for growth beyond what is on the ladder, right? And there is even this idea of scaling walls versus climbing ladders. That's a really interesting idea. That's like, is almost, if you are kind of like seeing the career ladder as a ladder and just like going step after step, sometimes you might get blocked. And the people that are actually scaling the walls or going beyond, or going like on the sidelines, are the ones that are actually going to be able to overcome those like blockers and be able to go to the next levels versus the people that are kind of like really straight on a straight line career ladder, right? So I think this is really important, and I think a lot of folks don't understand this. And the third is that time between promotions increases and the opportunity to actually get narrow as you climb the ladder, because of course there will be less staff principal or distinguished engineer positions than, let's say, senior or junior engineer positions. And you have to remember this idea of the 40-year career ahead, right? Most of us are going to be working for 40 years, and 40 years is a very long time. So it's like, if you want to kind of like try to speed up to get to the staff plus level and you care about the title, sometimes you're going to get the title on a company where the expectations for that title, the impact of the work, is not really aligned with what the title needs, right? So I think this is important to keep in mind. Now, let's transition into the core expectation. So I said all that as a background, but now the first big question that I want to answer is, okay, like there is like all this idea of dual track career ladder, but what are the patterns? What are the core expectations that I have seen in my experience as director of engineering across companies? And what are the things that senior engineers, folks that want to break through staff level, but sometimes get stuck and get frustrated, they often miss? So don't even bother about looking at all these details, but these are some of the career ladders that I either help to shape, help to detail, or have worked with in the past. And they have different variations of descriptions and dimensions of staff. But the main idea that I want to give is, to me, those are the three things that I found almost consistently. Like, if you do those three things, and I'm going to go over the details about each one of those, you're going to be golden as a staff plus engineer, even if you don't have the title, right? Even if you don't have the formal staff or principal engineer title. If you're doing those three things, blast radius, multi-scale planning, and ownership level, they're going to detail. To me, it means that you're already operating the staff level. You're already transitioned from like the senior engineer to being someone that's operating at the staff level. So I will start with this idea of blast radius, right? So we all heard about this idea of like high blast radius when it comes to incidents, right? We want to avoid problems on the infrastructure that have a high blast radius, right? Because it means that they actually impact the whole infrastructure and take down a lot of problems. But when it comes to impact, or when it comes to becoming staff, that's the thing you're chasing for. It's like you're chasing to have a high blast radius of impact. And there is this amazing article from Alex that where he describes the two dimensions that, in his opinion, what differs like a staff from a senior staff. And I think it's a perfect illustration of the thing that I want to say here. It's like a lot of people, they focus on the technical depth, right? Like how deep you know a technology or a group of technology, and they get obsessed about this. And I think this is where a lot of folks like get promoted from mid-level to senior level, is like because they get really deep on this. But I think like what a lot of people miss, and I think the expectation that, like, I would say maybe 50% of the cases that I have helped like as mentor have missed is the idea of the organizational surface, right? What does it mean, right? It means that is more important, and it's not that being technical or having a deep technical knowledge about the technology is not important, but it's like what is going to get you to the staff level is how much leverage can you get through, how much like organization surface can you impact. What do I mean by that, right? So if we look at the career ladder, like you have almost like, remember that being a staff is someone that is impacting multiple projects or multiple squads or multiple teams, right? So when I say about blast radius, is like a staff is someone that has a high blast radius of impact. So I don't really care much, and like, and organizations in general don't really care about like how technical you are necessarily. It's not that that's not important. We're going to see how being deep technically is important, but is like, is more important is like, what is the blast radius, what is the positive blast radius that you have been causing an organization when it comes to kind of like, you work on a thing that actually in some way or another impact the organization. And there are two. The reason why I chose like blast radius and not, let's say, high impact is because blast radius, I think, is the perfect illustration. It's like you can have like a blast radius that's so deep that completely change, let's say, the cost structure of a product, of a code base, of the infrastructure you work on, right? And that might not necessarily affect all engineers in the company, but it might like bring more revenue to the company or save more money, that will almost kind of like expand the potential of the company. Or you might be the one designing a new platform or designing a new library or something that's going to make everybody more effective, right? And it's like, it means being staff is you're constantly doing things that go beyond a single group of people, a single project, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing that a lot of folks get wrong is this idea of multi-scale planning. And I first heard about this idea on the famous Get Things Done book by David Allen, that I'm pretty sure most of you know. But actually, this came to I came to realization actually taking an online course from Thiago Forte. This idea of horizons of focus, right, is more than, I think, like, there is, if you read about this, there is this idea that a staff is someone that does, let's say, long-term planning or big picture thinking, right? Is someone that's able to think what is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, and put plans to actually get there. But in my opinion, is more than that. Is about the horizons of focus. Is like, are you able to not only see what could be done in the next 2 3 years, but also how to bring that in reality, right? And I think, like, as I said, like the same way that, like, for example, uh, a director is expected to be looking over the next couple of years, and once you start your career, almost you go from knowing what to do in the next couple of hours, right? You receive, as your junior engineer, you receive a task and like, oh, follow this pattern, do this thing, and then you barely know what you're going to be doing the next day or so. But as you get senior, you kind of already know, like, okay, I know that in order to deliver this project, I'm going to need to do this and this. So you might be working weeks ahead. The expectation for principal engineer, for example, or the same for director engineers in most companies, is someone that's shaping the future, someone that's bringing, someone that is kind of like constantly thinking ahead. But the is more than that, in my opinion. So why I call this expectation with scale planning is because it is about how to navigate on the organization structure, and that's in most companies. And is like, is how you able to get to that 3 year vision. Is like, is more important than, like, is not only having a vision and kind of like being the one that's telling everyone, like, we want to get there, we want to transition to this language, we want to like do this like platform change, or we want to, is like how you as a individual contributor is able to shape, is able to leverage the organization, the various organization like meetings and plannings and rituals that you have in your organization to get there. Is how you kind of cascade up and down the ideas, the pain points, to be able to get your vision into play. So it is about kind of like, you play with the organizational dynamic to get things moving, right? Uh, then the third and last expectation, that kind of, if you're doing this as a staff, or if you're doing this, you're definitely a staff, is this idea of ownership and autonomy level. And there is this amazing article from Randall Kochnick that he, it's like from a couple of years ago, this idea of implementers, solvers, and finders. is the idea that you start your career as a solution implementer, then you move into being a problem solver, and then you almost end as a problem finder, right? You go from someone that's giving, like, let's say, a task, a time, and a set of instructions that you have to follow to implement, kind of like, okay, migrate this thing, do this kind of thing, like follow these patterns, to go to someone that actually gets a more general problem and more abstract, and you have to decompose that problem to then be able to solve. That's a problem solver. To then be someone that's not only getting like big problems to solve, but it's actually someone that is identifying risks, is actually someone that is finding and raising those problems to be fixed, right? And it's almost like the same way. You start your career as an implementer, then you move into solver, and like at the end of the day, a very good senior engineer is usually a very good solver. But then to move to staff, you not only is the one that's solving issues, you're the one that is ahead of time, you're the one that's trying to find high leverage, high blast radius problems for the organization to fix, right? You become a finder, right? And and not only that, you like also as a staff, you never actually stop being an implementer or a solver. There is no, like, I think there is another extreme idea that kind of like, oh, if you are a staff, you're only doing, let's say, the the finder kind of job. Is the idea of like a lot of like the architects that like maybe 10 years ago they used to exist, that they were only kind of like looking what to do ahead, but they lost touch with reality, right? But in reality, you kind of like, you a finder is also a solver and an implementer. And if you were to visualize this, it would be something like this. It's like you go from implementer to solver to finder, but you actually can solve problems or implement things if needed, right? And I think it's even more than that. One feedback that I got after my talk in Boston was this: there is one level above that that is missing. That's the driver. And I think that's so key for staff plus level. Is not only about finding new problems, solving problems that someone told you what to do. It's also about, once you find those problems, once you kind of like you get them to be prioritized, right? You are the one driving those things to completion. You're not the one, let's say, doing, let's say, project management or doing the same thing that the engineering manager is doing, but almost as a staff plus, you're almost an executive that's trying to make sure that the important things are getting done. And if they're moving forward, okay, you kind of like, you keep monitoring that. But if you see that something is trending down, something is not going as well as should, you actually the one that is going to do a deep dive. You're going to try to unblock that team. That's the staff role. It's like someone that not only kind of like implements or so, but finds and drives things to be done, big things, right? And the main action items from part one, and then we'll pause to see if you have any questions. One, high blast radius, and some of the questions that I would like for you guys to answer, especially if you want to try to grow more, right? Is how is your high blast radius of impact? Are you working on, let's say, the idea of snack tasks that really feel good, you're shipping a lot of things, or really high blast radius projects, things that take time, but once they materialize, they have like a huge, either deep or broad impact in the organization, the business, in the product, right? And two, what was your last project that you worked on that had an impact beyond your direct team, beyond your direct set of code bases, right? Those are really important questions. Number two, multi-scale planning influence, right? That's the second expectation. Can you work ahead of time and add things to the roadmap, to the backlog of other teams? Can you influence stakeholders? Can you negotiate dependencies? If you're not able to do this, you're not going to be a super successful staff engineer, and you might need to kind of like to find ways to like to practice this skill, right? And two, like, how are you able to influence your department with your vision? If you have idea to go to to do something, to adopt the technology? Are you able to align that with the business priorities and put that in a way that you're actually shaping the vision of what we're going to do next year or 2 years from now? And third, the idea of ownership and autonomy level, right? I think a really important question is this one, like, if you look over the last couple of months, right? What percentage of your time you're working as an implementer, meaning you got a task that had like a clear definition of what needs to be done, and you had already patterns or set of things that was more or less kind of copy and paste or kind of like replicate existing patterns versus solving that you got something that you actually had to figure out how to solve that problem, to break that down, to architect things versus finder, actually kind of like being proactively thinking and raising risks, like bringing ideas, right? Shaping the next set of things that are going to add on the backlog, on the roadmap. And then ask yourself, is this the ideal location for your level and your next level if you want to get closer to that, right? And then if you look at those things, like this is just the action items, just a summary in one slide. All right, I will pause here for 1 minute to see if we have questions, Bruno. If not, I will move on.
So, although I do not see any questions here, right? But I just want to, let's see if anyone has questions. But I just want to register here the fact that we have both Elder Moraes. Hey, Elder, how are you doing? And also Rodrigo Graciano. Hey, Rodrigo, how are you doing? So two Java champions here, coming here to participate here. So, and guys, if you have any questions, come on, this is a good moment. So Thiago did ask me to answer questions along the way. So feel free to ask questions, and every time they hit pauses, we're gonna be answering them, right? So
Easy.
yeah, but we don't have any questions for now.
If we don't have anything, let's move on. And I think we have more questions on part two.
Right, that's good.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go. So if the part one of the agenda was about career ladders and core expectations, part two here is about the idea of transformational leaps. So this idea of transformational leaps is about what I call behavior, right? What are the behaviors that actually those folks that move again and again had, that the folks that either could not move to staff or to see the staff didn't, right? So this actually comes, the idea of behavior actually comes with this idea of behavior interview. And the main thing is, why do we ask, why do a lot of companies ask this like question, kind of like, tell me about a time you solve a conflict with a peer of yours. Tell me about a time you influence the organization. Tell me about the time you kind of like, you innovated, right? Why do like across, I would say most companies, that's the standard kind of like questions that you get in the famous behavioral questions. And the answer is because they want to know not only what you are capable of or what is your potential, but most important, they want to know like what have you done, right? Because usually the things you have done in the past are much better and much stronger indication of your ability to do that again in the future, right? And when it comes to become a staff, I think one idea that I explore is this idea that if you were to look back over the last, let's say, almost 8 years that I have been working in companies that had staff plus level and being part of a lot of promotion committees and a lot of like performance calibrations, what are the strategies and behaviors that the top performing engineers apply that help them to achieve promotions to staff level and beyond? What are the set of things that, okay, this is a pattern of behavior that I have seen helping folks. And at the same time, what are the things that the behaviors that are usually problematic, or the behaviors that are usually, if you're not able to do those things, or if you behave in a certain way, this usually means you're going to get stuck, right? And in order to answer that, I actually broke down like on the like staff plus level, the promotion in three, let's say, three levels, right? And I'm gonna go one by one with some patterns, and then I will summarize the top three across levels. So the first thing, and this is like from lead to staff, or in some companies from, let's say, senior to staff, right? What are the patterns? What are the things that actually help those folks to achieve those promotions? And here's like here's some like word cloud with like, this is like, I have been collecting like this achievements and behaviors for a while. And this is just like some of the top words that I have seen in cases of successful promotions to those levels. But I think this is not as important. The most important thing are those things. So on the leap one, let's say, in order to break through from senior or to lead in some companies with staff, what I have seen that actually moves the needle is those three things. So, like strategic decision making, and here what it means to be strategic, and I think strategy is a often overused word, is like basically you are able to drive impact on the technical side, right? That was aligned with business priorities and goals and roadmap, right? It's like if we're able to have, let's say, strategic decision making, like you help to make decisions that help to drive the business to whatever the business of the company was trying to achieve, usually is something that is going to be a pretty strong indicator of like someone that is going to be able to have a case, right? Versus what I think a lot of folks get wrong is they work on a technology with the hope that that technology is going to achieve something for the business, but it's not aligned itself, right? Second thing, effective mentorship and leadership. I think like I said when I was talking about the idea of implementer, solver, and finder, that kind of like you never stop being like a solver or implementer, because you're trying to have impact at the organization level, right? And the only way to scale in a sustainable way is not by not being the solver and implementer of everything you want to do, right? And the only way to for you to actually be a finder or a driver is if we have other folks that are kind of able to be the solvers or the implementers under your organization. So that's why mentorship is not necessarily like the only way, but it's like one of the most effective patterns of scaling up, right? And that's the second thing that I have seen for folks that move from senior to staff, is they were able to effectively mentor and lead projects, lead ideas, right? And third, like in order to break to the staff level, you're not only able to influence your peers or other folks from the same, let's say, function, right? You're not only able to work with engineers, you're able to work with product, with design, with customer support, right? You're because like those projects that have high impact, they have high blast radius, they often require someone that's able to talk multiple languages, right? They're able to kind of like, okay, this person is saying this because they care about this. They're not someone that is like only an engineer. They are able to connect with the business. They're able to connect across, because in order for a product, in order for a software to be successful, it goes beyond just being strong on the engineering side. So that those are the patterns on the first leap. On the second leap, and this is the one like once you get to staff level, that's almost the equivalent of engineering manager. How you break through the senior staff, that's like more mid-level between kind of like engineering manager and director. And again, those is just like some anonymized word clouds from my collection of achievements and behaviors that I have seen over promotion committees and performance calibrations. And you can see like mentor, actively, strategy, all those words appear in those bullet points from those folks. But the most important thing, like to this level, is not only kind of like, in order to break to this level, you're not only talking about strategic decision making. Like for example, you're talking about leadership in critical initiatives, and that's like is not only strategic, but is like you're mentoring across multiple teams. You have a broad and scalable influence, and I think that's like you're not only instrumental in mentoring, but you also had an influence beyond, like let's say the particular technical teams that you have like a lot of knowledge on, you're kind of able to spread ideas, you're able to kind of like to go beyond the folks that you're able to talk on the day to day. And not only you're able to break through, but you're able to, let's say, when I say number three here, operational excellence, like a senior staff is someone that is not only able to deliver one project, is able to kind of like, you're able to consistently deliver those projects and keep those particular groups of engineers like successful, like consistently, right? And then the number three, the leap between principal and beyond here, you see that there is a lot of emphasis on platform. And here is like where there is one thing that I said that like, oh, it's not that technical like knowledge or how deep you are technically is not important. Here is how it is important. Is number two. Is like those folks that are able to get to the highest levels of staff plus engineers, they're able to use their deep technical knowledge about things to actually innovate, right? I think like that's like they're able to come up with idea of a platform. They're able to come up with idea of even like a process that will make the company a lot more, I don't know, stable, a lot like innovate a lot more. They're able to connect the dots and bring a technology that actually makes sense to achieve like something that very ambitious, right? And they not only are looking at, let's say, a particular group of like squads, they have a full domain, right? Like almost like in most companies, this idea of like business units, like I think like someone mentioned that at Google, for example, you have YouTube, you have Google Cloud, you have ads, you have search, right? Imagine that like a principal engineer in most companies is someone that owns that particular domain, right? It's someone that's like their knowledge is spread across like an entire business unit, right? And they are able to influence not only that product line, but they're also able to kind of like to align on what is the strategy, work with executives. I think like in order to break the principle and beyond, you're almost executive, right? And number two, we already talked about, so is how good you are to drive innovation and impact with technical leadership and technical ideas that are out of the box. And you have like mentorship is almost second nature here. It's like you're able to mentor others. You kind of like is what you do. Almost mentorship at this level is what you do because you're not going to be able to get too deep in so many things when you have like a full domain of ownership. And I think to summarize this part, what are the top performing behaviors across all levels? If I would summarize the different levels, I would say one is strategic influence and ownership. And as I said, ability to drive technical and strategic decisions. They're aligned with business goals. This is like simple, but a lot of people miss. A lot of people, they don't really understand what they're doing and how that is connected. What is the organization trying to achieve? What is the strategy behind what the CEO is saying, right? And also, this is not only solving the problems ahead, it's trying to anticipate the future, right? So that's why about strategic here also means more than solving the problem at hand. Number two, leadership and mentorship, as I said, like in order to scale to be a staff plus engineer, you not only need to learn to delegate and like one of the most effective way to delegate and to have people that you trust is to mentor, to help others to grow along with you, right? And I think like leadership here is not only you mentor, let's say one-on-one, you almost mentor in a group setting. And the best way to mentor is leading, right? It's like there is nothing more powerful than being the one that's driving a project, that's showing how to do on the job, right? And a lot of folks are going to learn almost by osmosis by watching you doing those things. I think that's like leadership and mentorship. There are multiple shapes, but I think that's a behavior that if you don't have is going to be really hard for you to become a staff. And number three is technical excellence and innovation. And as I said, when I said that is not that how deep you are technically is not important, it's more important how you're driving innovation along with that. So this is just in one slide for folks that want to have in one pager. But then what is the opposite, right? So I talk about this idea kind of like those are the behaviors that usually help folks to achieve the expectations I mentioned. What are the pitfalls, or what are the things that? Go ahead, so Bruno.
Yeah. So Chuck, I think that's there's a
Oh,
question here that might be before might be
yeah.
interesting. So Rodrigo Graciano asks here, great talk, right? In a corporate world, it's not uncommon to find managers who keep their best resource in the shadow, right? What's your suggestion for people in similar situation? Because you're talking about leadership and you're talking about all of that. So what do you think about it?
Yeah. Reading the question. Let me try to. I'm going to try to keep their best resources in the shadow. Yeah, I mean, so the thing that I would say is it is on the best interests of your manager to to leverage their best resources or the best people in the best way possible by giving visibility of what's happening, right? Where they need help and where those people can help them. Like it is, I think in the same way that if you look at the engineering management track, like almost like the same patterns of behaviors that prevent those managers to break to director and executive level are exactly those. Like the managers that kind of like instead of giving visibility and bringing more people helping to grow are the ones that are trying to, let's say, hide like the big opportunities because they believe they need to be selective about that. I don't know, Rodrigo, if that was the what is you what's your suggestion for people in this situation? I think like if you are in your organization or under a management structure that you are not being given opportunity, you feel that you are constantly almost blind to what's happening. I think like what you can do, I think like is one definitely kind of like ask for more, is definitely kind of like go beyond. There is actually a really great framework called what is the name? Forgot. I'll send the link later, but about like how to ask for more opportunities, how to kind of like try to understand the business, even if your manager is not being the one that is kind of like giving a lot of visibility to you. But like if you are stuck in that situation, I think like the first thing is align expectations. I think like be clear, kind of like what you're capable of, what you're aiming for, and give the feedback that you feel you're not getting enough information to be able to help, to be able to connect with what are the business priorities, right? I think like, and then I mean I would say like is the famous change organization or change organization, right? If you still not getting enough visibility, the main thing I would say is you should definitely consider like an internal rotation to another part of the org where the manager is going to be being more transparent. You're going to have like a more, let's say, a conversation along the way, right? Because in order to grow to staff and beyond, usually it's going to be pretty hard if you have someone that's playing against you, right? That's like almost capping your impact, right?
Yeah, that's great. So, and one of the things that I'm not sure which framework you're referring to, but a question that I like to suggest, that I think is a very very good question, is if you talk to your boss or maybe to your manager or maybe to skip manager, right, the boss of your boss, um, is something along the lines of what do I have to be involved with the most important projects for you, right? And a lot of times when you have managers like this that will try to keep people in the shadows, is because they're afraid they're going to lose their resource. They're going to afraid the resource is going to compete with them, for example. And so many times you're going to have to show your boss, show your manager, right, that you are helping him achieve what he wants to achieve, right? And one of the things that I see, Thiago, a lot, I'm not sure if you see this, is it's very common for people to come to their managers and they talk about themselves, right? So I want to grow. I want to do things different. I want to work with different technology. I want this, I want that, right? But it's very
Yes.
rare for people to come to their
Only
managers.
ask, ask, ask.
Yes, I want to help you. So what do you need, right? And so and that should be both ways, right?
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I found the framework it's called the Magic Loop by Ethan Evans, and it is the idea is exactly what you said. It's like the first thing is you need to do like your current job well, right? There is an amazing article I sent to you, Bruno. You can probably
I,
share the link later.
yes,
The
I
first
just
thing is
put,
like do your
yeah, I just put, guys, I just put the thing that actually that Chag is talking right now. I just put in the link on the chat for everyone to see the link.
actually let me share my screen here. Let me see if I can because I think
Yeah.
this might be a good visual for folks to. Let me share again.
Oh no,
Okay,
yes,
let
you're
me.
okay. All
Can you
right. So
folks see my screen?
yes.
So I think like this is amazing framework, and like when it comes to kind of like I'm on the shadow. I think that the first thing to keep in mind is like, are you doing your current job well? Are you able to meet expectations according to your level? And then second thing, ask your manager for more, right? When you see things that, oh, I see that this is problem that you're struggling with or that I could help. Can I go and do that? I think that's the first step. Then ask, then like do what they ask if they like it's actually not only suggesting what you think is going to be helpful, you ask them what else can I do, right? I'm already doing this, what else can I do, right? And then the third thing is like now that you're able to help them with their problems, you're like, oh, I would like to do something that will actually move me to the next level. What would those things be? And do what they suggest. Like actually is an amazing article, and I think there is like even more than that, but is like usually like, and I don't know if that is, and you go from asking to suggesting. So initially you're more kind of like you're asking your manager like for their suggestion, and on the second iteration like the best performers are the ones that are actually suggesting I'm thinking about doing this. And then you go to like the sub top performers are the ones that are just doing it. It's like you don't even ask more, you don't even suggest. It's like I have done this, like I saw this problem, and I think like if you're doing all those things, and like it is amazing article, I definitely recommend you checking out. I believe it was Rodrigo, right? Uh, then I think if you're doing all those things and your manager is hiding opportunities from you or you're not, then I think like you should definitely consider like maybe changing jobs, changing at least a part of like what manager report to, right? But I find often that like that's not really a very common thing to do, to see managers restricting their top performers.
Mhm.
And if they're doing that, they're usually restricting themselves, right? They're restricting their own growth because they cannot scale without good people like with them.
Yeah, I know we have to face the fact that there are bad managers, of course, right? But at the same time, I always like to say that discussion about, they're bad managers, they're malicious manager, right? But we should not treat how do you say you should not consider malicious something that can be explained by incompetence, right? And so it is
Yes.
true that a lot of the managers, they grow, and sometimes they're not good managers, but they get promoted, so they become incompetent managers. So a lot of times we have to do the work and consider that they're just incompetent and not malicious, and so we can help them be more competent sometimes, right? So
Yeah, you have showed them the way, and ask for more, set expectations. I think that's, and I'm going to talk about this on part three of the presentation. I think those are things that are rarely done well by managers and by by engineers.
cool. There's another question here that I think has to do with what we're talking about right now. Maybe you want to answer that right now. I'm a tech lead who just took engineering manager role, right? How do I deal with existing experienced tech leads, challenge my authority and engineering decisions I want to take for the team?
That's an interesting one. I mean, is like, I mean, the first thing I would recommend, I think, like, this is almost like the same challenge you have, let's say, as a director or as a staff engineer as well, right? If you have other staff engineers or other directors that are going against your way, or they're kind of like working on things that like almost kind of like put your objectives, your OKRs in jeopardy, right? So the thing I would say is like have a one-on-one of that person, trying to understand why they're doing that, try to build a relationship with them. I think a lot of things become way easier once you kind of like you get closer to them, and you don't treat them as kind of like they're doing this because they're going against you, but you're kind of like you're trying to understand like exactly what are the why are you doing that, right? What incentives do you have that are like pushing you to do those things? Like, is that by intention that you're like, what are the reasons that you don't like my proposal or that you were worried about what we are doing? I think like often those are the things that help you to have a good peer-to-peer relationship. And being a tech lead and having other tech leads challenging their authority is normal because it's like they still don't trust you. And in order to build that trust, is like that is the time it takes. And I think like a lot of the things that I said when I said about multi-scale planning is multi-scale planning is like almost like how do you influence the organization, right? That takes time, that takes a lot of like it takes like time for idea that you have to actually have someone that's actually going to be excited about that, right? Is going to take time. If you want to go something that's going to be almost a big project, or it's going to take time for people to actually be onboarded with that. So it's like it's natural. People are averse to change, right? So I don't know if that's the case, but it's normal when you're starting to have people that are going to challenge your authority or going to go against you. But you have to separate: is this intentionally, or is because they still know your work? They don't understand what the business is trying to do. So the best way to do that is usually one-on-one and give it some time. Give it some time, try again. Like I think that's what has usually worked in my experience. And of course, if it doesn't work, I think it's worthwhile like escalate that, bring your manager into play, kind of all those things. Like, but like the first thing is always try to have a fantastic peer-to-peer relationship, peer-to-peer feedback. If you can manage that, you're going to be seen as a much more mature, a much more like capable person than someone that's escalating on every single issue, every single blocker is kind of like trying to make like to make some big deal out of that. So need to be careful, I would say, on that one.
And
Perfect.
and one
I don't
interesting
know.
thing, Thiago, that when I see something, I'm not sure that's Sushant's situation. You know, I don't know the details of his situation, right? But the one thing that I see a lot when people come to me and say, you know, they wanted to challenge my decisions, right? That I want to take for the team. And my question is, you know, are those decisions actually being discussed with the team, right? Or are you now, because you became a engineer manager, now you think that you are the one that makes the decisions, and you don't listen to the team anymore? So I would, you know, because a lot of times people will challenge the decisions that they don't feel they own the decisions with it, right? So if you just come in and you say, now we're going to do things like this because I want to, and I don't understand the reason for it. You know, I was not involved in the process, and you know, I feel bad, right? I feel bad that this is just a decision that's being forced on me, right? And you know, we are technical people. You know, we are experienced developers. We feel bad about someone just coming in and telling us what to do, right? We also want autonomy. We also want to participate in these decisions, and so that's the kind of thing that came to my mind. I'm not sure if that's your case, Sushant, but you know, that's the first thing I thought about when I had read your question.
Amazing, amazing. I think this reminded me of the kind of like don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution, right? But also the idea that oh, if you have two engineers, they have equally good solutions that are going to use different technologies, and you as a manager, you have to decide which one to use. What should you do, right? And the answer is like bring out the two of them for coffee and have discussions, and like it's gonna be very hard for you to try to make a decision on a super analytical way, right? You're gonna have to kind of like understand the context and like is like the easy way to solve this is like by building relationship and by having people that kind of like uh exactly kind of like are able to sponsor others. And I think like there is one amazing article from Tanya Riley. She has a book called the staff engineer's path, I believe, that's called something to do with sponsorship. But she said that like the one harmful behavior from staff plus and beyond sometimes is sometimes they want someone to do something for them, but they want them to do exactly as if they would do. And like they give a problem someone's super excited about the problem, but they see, oh, like they took a different architectural approach that they would take, and they give feedback, they like try to do exactly as. And the best thing you can do is like, if you don't feel that's going to be detrimental to the success of the thing, let that go and let that people go in a slightly different direction. Only do those things, like only intervene if you feel that that's actually something that is not only ego on your side, that like you do this so you have everyone, but it actually is something that might lead to some really big problem. And people feel a lot more empowered because of that. So I think like it might depend case by case, but it usually is something that is worthwhile taking a look. I will send the link to the article by Tony Riley if you. But if nothing else, I'll go back to the part two.
Yeah,
Bruno, any other comments?
No, yeah, just a comment here. InfoSX says, I'm a Java beginner and this is so good to watch. So thanks for being here with us. So Rodrigo Garcian is saying here, great suggestions. Thanks, Rodrigo. So good to have you here. All right, so let me put your present. Oh, so you stop sharing your screen, so if you can share it again.
Yes. And Bruno, I'll send you the article for Tony Riley called "Have Impact in Engineering by Supporting Other People's Ideas." That's like amazing read for anyone that wants to go to Staff and Beyond. Let me share my screen again.
And I just put the article that he mentioned here. I'll put the link on the chat so you can take a look there. All right, so let's get back here.
So we talk about the top performing behaviors, right? Now let's talk about what are the behavior of the people that I have seen usually having, let's say, promotion cases, declined or bad performance ratings at the senior plus level, right? So oops, 1 second, what's going on? Those are some of the words that I have seen in cases of those people, of like behaviors that actually got those people there. 1 second, folks. Yeah. So what are the top behaviors? Then I would summarize into 3 things, and I think like those are like you see that almost the opposite of the top behaviors. Like lack of strategic vision is something that again and again we're gonna get folks like stuck, right? Because like, and again, strategic here means you're able to drive your technical tasks that are in some way in alignment with what the business goals are, right? If you're trying to do something that's technically amazing, right, but is not necessarily the priority of the company or of the area you are, that's usually going to be more a distraction than something helpful. So that's something that someone worked on an amazing project that was not the right priority, that took a lot of time and was a big distraction. That's something that is really important to keep in mind not to do. Second thing is, if you're unable to delegate and scale your impact, it's going to be really hard for you to have like a huge scope, right? It's like if you, as a staff, you're expected to work across multiple teams, right? And if you're unable to delegate, if you're unable to lead, right, it's going to be really hard for you to be impactful across multiple groups, right? So I think like this is also a blocker if you want to go to staff plus and beyond, right? And the third is poor stakeholder management and communication in general. And I think I talk about being able to communicate cross-function, right? Being able to work with product, with like support, with, depending on the company, with hardware engineers, right? Like if you're able to do this and you're able to manage dependent stakeholders of that project, right? And communicate what are the technical challenges in a way that resonates with them, negotiate priorities, right? It's going to be really hard for you to survive or to even get to the staff plus level, because that's going to be the job most of the time, right? So what are the action items for part 2? And then we're going to get to part 3. That's the last part where I put all this together. Is like, one thing is like sometimes like having role models are a lot more powerful than checklists. So this is the idea that a lot of people, when they want to move to staff plus level, they look at the career ladder, they look and they see the bullet points. Oh, you need to have impact in 2 to 3 chains. So they try to actually do a checklist, right? But the most powerful way to think about that and to get to those levels are actually seeing someone playing that in real time, right? And like, is a question that I ask a lot of folks in mentorship calls is like, who are the top 5 individuals who have inspired your professional career the most, and what specific skills or qualities they possess that you wish to develop? And then you should develop those skills and focus on like how you leverage those things to be sustainable and scalable a lot more than trying to go to the career ladder and try to check every single box there. Again, keep in mind that the 3 core expectations that I mentioned are being kind of like are being constantly think about, because I think those are the things that matter. Every single checkbox that is on the career ladder often doesn't matter. And I have seen multiple promotions where they clearly didn't have like, oh, they had like whatever was one line in the career ladder, but they had impact, they had influence, and they were like operating at the high ownership level, right? Second, everyone has at least one key behavior that's holding them back. I think sometimes it's more important to fix those things than to try to develop new skills. So if I go back to the 3 behaviors that I mentioned here, if you have any of those, let's say, behaviors or like any of those patterns on your performance calibration, your day to day, is much better. It's going to be much more impactful for you to like solve that than to try to develop the other behaviors, right? Those things tend to block you a lot more than anything else that you do. And the third one is the idea of outside in versus inside out. Is that a lot of times every company has a different reality, right? And what I have seen a lot is folks that they read cases, they read books about staff plus from other companies, and they try to bring that and apply that in their company. While like it would be a lot more effective if they look at the people that got promoted to staff plus level in their current company and try to reverse engineer that to their reality. So it's a lot more effective to do that way. And this is the idea of informational interviews. It's like basically when you ask someone that was promoted or someone that's already operating at the next level, and you ask them, tell me what does your typical day look like? Right? How do you manage priorities? How do you manage your time? You're going to get a lot more insights and ideas how to be successful at that environment at your current company than if you ask someone at Google or IBM, like, because those realities are super different. So it's like there is the idea of canonical promotion cases that's like if you can build like a document with like what were the things that got people promoting your organization to those levels and focus on that, you're going to get a much higher chance of being at that level than like trying to do that like from outside, right? All right, then part 3, we're getting close to the end here, folks, is the idea of staff projects. So the idea of staff projects came, I believe it was 2020 or 2019. This amazing book from Will Larson called Staff Engineer. And I think on the book, he was saying that in a lot of companies, in order to be promoted to staff plus level, you need to complete a thing that's called a staff project. What is a staff project? He listed out on the book those 3 things. And I pretty much agree with that. It's like it's something that's complex and ambiguous, right? It's something that has numerous like and divided stakeholders, and something that is going to be named if it is either a failure or a success, right? It's something that the company cares about that to a point where if that works, if that project is successful, is going to be on our company meaning like is something that is key for the business to succeed, right? And on the book, he has multiple cases of folks that actually like tell about what was their staff project, right? What was the project that was complex and ambiguous, a lot of different stakeholders and critical for the company that they complete to break through the staff level. And usually those projects are not projects that you're going to be able to do in a couple of weeks or even in a couple of months. Some of those projects are year-long projects, right? And I actually bring this back together to you guys to what I believe is my framework. And I think like I would go actually one step further than Will Larson did. Is like and say staff project is not how only you get to the staff level, it's actually how you keep being staff. It's not only about finishing one staff project, those projects that check those criteria, is about continuously being doing things that are at the staff project level, right? And in order to achieve the high blast radius, do the multi-scale planning and have ownership levels where you're not only waiting instructions or waiting someone to give, you're actually finding or driving things, right? And like, or actually doing, and at the same time, doing the top behaviors of strategic influence, leadership, and technical excellence is like, is basically this, right? So if you actually look, how I bring this is like the core expectations are the what. It's like those are the things that you have to achieve, right? As a staff, in my opinion, and based on what I have seen, you have to be constantly be doing those three things. And those are like my checklist almost for staff projects as well. And how you do that? Usually by emulating the top behavior, by role modeling the behaviors for the people that are able to get and survive there. Definitely you can try other methods. Definitely there are multiple hows to achieve the what, but those are the things that kind of like if you're able to do technical innovation, if you're able to lead and mentor, if you're able to have some strategic influence and ownership on a domain, those are the things that are going to keep feeding back forever, right? And also you avoid the things that hold a lot of this back. And if I put this all together on a single image, right, is the idea is almost like a framework, right? It's like in order to become a staff and to keep being staff, you need to be doing high blast, like things that are high blast radius of impact that will often require like multiple scale planning influence, and will often require you to be operating on high ownership and autonomy level, right? You're not going to be waiting to want someone to tell you what to do. You're going to be finding and driving, as I said, and usually you're going to be implementing the three behaviors, right? You're going to have multiple chances to do or to demonstrate strategic influence and ownership end to end. You're going to have many opportunities for leadership and mentorship, and you're going to be powered by technical excellence and innovation, right? And I think the next question that a lot of you might get is, my halves are, how do I make sure my staff projects are good enough and they will have time to work on that, right? So it's like, yes, I understand this idea that I should be doing this like high blast radius, multi-scale planning, and high autonomy level, but how do I make sure that I have time, right? And my answer is this: is like you have to be continuously setting and managing expectations with your manager in writing. And I think that's the thing that I said, oh, it's so rare to see, and is like so simple and yet so rare, right? Is the idea of writing down basically like for every half, for every 6 months, or for every year, what is going to be your staff project for that half, what are the other high leverage projects you have, and what are the skills that either you're gonna improve or you're gonna actually try to fix based on feedback you got, right? And I actually have here examples of a real case of someone that worked with me of like a real staff project that person is driving. For example, in this case, this person is driving adoption of Apache Pinot in the organization. Apache Pinot is something that is gonna completely change how we do, let's say, big data analysis, because you are like pretty much able to do queries on data that in previous, let's say, generations you had to run a whole data pipeline to process the data to then be able to do queries, right? And this is something that's going to take months, if not years, and is going to unlock so many business cases, right? But at the same time, this person is also doing some other, like, let's say, improvements on existing migrations that are also critical for keeping the business running. And this person also has areas to develop, right? Like in this case, is someone that, even though he's really expert in one area, is trying to improve trying to go more broad and be able to like work end to end on the stack is someone that knows that in order for them to perform better as staff, they need to be able to handle conflicts because they know that in order to manage stakeholders, sometimes they're going to have to say no. Sometimes they're going to have to handle multiple conflict opinions or even say something that someone might not like, right? And also someone that knows that is going to develop this idea of being influencing the organization, being catching problems when they're still small, right? So this is another area for development. And this is something that's so rare to see. And I think is the first step of the framework is write down, think about what are those things that you can do with your skills that can drive, can check out those boxes, right? And the second question you might have is how to make sure my manager is not biased and I write some expectations that are not necessarily aligned with what is expected at that level. And my answer here would be you not only write the expectations, you actually, the same way that you have calibrations for performance cycle at the end of the performance cycle to make sure that whatever your manager wrote that was your impact is actually at the, let's say, the frequently exceed expectations or below the expectation, right? You also should do that for your expectations. So this is the idea of expectations calibration, right? And not a lot of organizations do that, but it's the idea that you not only review your performance like looking backwards, you also review, oh, I have those expectations, I'm aiming this level, I want to be like a top performer, or I want to kind of like break through the next level. Is this, if I achieve those things that I'm proposing, those projects, will I get to the impact that is expected at the next level, or to be like someone that is exceeding expectation at my current level? So, and then there are different ways to do that. This is just one example that I have seen working. Is like you make the managers present someone's expectations. You have a facilitator. You have other more senior ICs coming, and also being the ones kind of like almost like acting as auditors. And then to finalize, what are the action items for part three? And we're getting to the end here is like, if you want to get to the staff plus level and if you want to like break through, break the ceiling, as I said, out of my title, you have to write your expectations and you have to add at least one staff project and one key skill. Like, what is a staff project? Is something that will have a high blast radius of impact, that will require you to do multi-scale planning to influence the organization, and also something that will require you to go from just being a solver to being a finder or even a driver, right? You have to calibrate it against peers and mentors, even if you don't have an organization. The expectations calibration ritual at the beginning of the cycle, you can like talk to your mentor, show like, this is the expectations that I align with my manager for me to get promoted end of next year. And there is like this saying that kind of like the best time to write your expectations was December of the past year. The worst time is the week before the self-assessment is due. And the second, like the worst time is on the week before when you have to submit your self-assessment. And the second best time is right now, right? So if you don't have the expectation aligned, take the time to write it down. It's so important. And a lot of people, they stay on the modus operandi of just doing things out of the backlog and they forget their career. Writing expectations is like one of the most important things for your career. And third thing is like, you should not only be waiting for the formal performance review or promotion cycles. You should be doing ideally every month or every other month or every quarter, like a quick checkpoint with your manager, just like green, yellow, red, right? If you look at the expectations you wrote down at the beginning of the cycle, ask your manager, if you look at those things, how do you think we are trending here? We're trending on a positive direction. We actually have to recalibrate the expectations. So I think that's like all I got, folks. And then here's the one summary or one pager of the talk is like titles or expectations, hidden growth opportunities, and the idea of the 40-year career ladder on the part one. Then the three staff plus expectations, high blast radius impact, multi-scale planning, and three ownership and autonomy levels. And then transformational leaps, like the things that might help you to find the behaviors that are most critical, role models over checklists, what are the key limiting behaviors and inside out growth, right? And last, what are the staff plus projects that are going to actually help you to move the needle and how you do that? Again, write down your expectations, review with your managers, calibrate with your mentors, calibrate with people that are at the next level, and do monthly and quarterly reviews to make sure that you're not going to have a surprise at the end. That's all I got. And now we have Q&A. And while we answer more questions, I want to leave this question to you all. What is the highest leverage thing you can do next week with your skills, your relationships, your vision? And here's like technical skills that will cause the highest blast radius in your organization, your community, open source, whatever it is.
All right, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. So, let me just take this out of here. So one thing that I want to make sure that everyone got this right. So Thiago does have a podcast, the engineer advice that you didn't ask, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit. So what do you talk about there, man? Is only you? You have other people
Yes.
participating? So tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So the podcast is myself and other four engineering leaders from different companies. And we usually talk about topics that are often not really very like there's not a lot of content about. Like for example, how to do one-on-ones. Like we talk about why it's important to have junior engineers. Right? We talk about um, our different views on engineering frameworks or productivity frameworks, or engineering productivity frameworks. And the fun thing is that we have one principal engineer, we have one senior director, we have someone that's the engineering manager, we have myself, right? And we all have been working different companies. So we talk about topics that are relevant to leaders, right? How to become a manager of managers, right?
Mhm, mhm.
We have episodes on so many topics on career growth, right? Like a lot of like what we have been talking here, even like how to get a job in a big tech, like how to interview well, right? A lot of those ideas. We have episodes on that, and we have a lot more coming on season three. And some of the premium episodes from season two, we're actually going to be releasing them publicly over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that's awesome. So for people to participate, go there and that link right there. Make sure I see lots of people click on the link. That's great. Um, and while we leave the link there for a little bit, let's just go for questions here. So Andres had a comment here before. He said that the other side of the coin, right? So seen from the manager perspective, right? So it's great that you're talking about this because I think that's something, Thiago, that's hard many times, right? For us to see how the managers are looking at those things, right? And so, thanks for sharing that with us. Uh, do you think that understanding think what they want is important for having all success in all these?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, super important. I don't know. That was I was trying to read the questions on the
Uh,
on the chat. Sorry.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so you can read the questions, or I can read the questions, right? So whatever is better for you.
No, no, no.
So why you're reading the question? Then let me just say that Sushant, right? Actually, she said that's her husband account, so I don't know her name. Um, but she said that she was with me in Jacksonville. She's a friend of
Amazing.
Eal, so very very good to see you here. Eal is such a great guy. Jacksonville is such a great job as a group. So if you ever have a chance to go there and give a talk there, the guys are doing great. So she says here that she kind of condensed the thing that we talk about. It takes time to realize an idea and that I'm building towards. Build peer-to-peer relationships, very very important. Try to understand where they are coming from, right? So listen to your people in your team and involve the team decision makers. So she was uh, just kind of overview
It's
for us.
summarizing. Amazing, amazing summary. Yeah, amazing summary. And I think the previous comment from Andreas, right, about like seeing the other side of the coin. Yeah, 100%. I think it's like is so important. And I think like even like for me as a director now is like I really appreciate when I talk to principal engineers and they bring their challenge or what their perspective is, right? I think it's like, and like even like people from other functions, like talking to the most junior engineers in the company, even as a director, is like so important. It's like you get a lot of like amazing kind of insights.
Yeah. Cool. And so Andre says here, I like to see this that way, right? Treat your manager and your colleagues as clients, right? So, so that's taking responsibility, right? When you see other people as clients and they're expecting your response and all that, it takes responsibility because a lot of times that's what we do, right? So we are consultants. For example, I have a consulting company, so we are consultants, and sometimes when inside the company, we forget that in fact we're there to serve other people, right?
100%. And I think like this is also about ownership, right? Like I think like a lot of people like sometimes they expect a lot, they ask for a lot, but they don't give, right? So I think like treat that as colleagues or clients is the idea. You have to give first. You have to kind of like to be responsible. You cannot just wait or ask, right? Or so I think like this is so important to take ownership of like your career and your kind of like your project. Like I think it is a good mindset. I actually like that.
So that I think that's for Laura's question, right? Because Laura goes exactly on that point. She says, when I do one-on-one with my manager, he always tells me that there's nothing to be rewarded for and that I just should continue to do what I'm already doing, right? So, and you just mentioned about taking ownership for your career. And so how can you deal for a manager like this that tell, yeah, I know you're just doing your job. Don't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe she's just doing her job. I don't know, but what
Yeah.
do you tell her?
I yeah, I think like there are like two things there. I think like one is there is the art of asking for feedback, right? I think I believe we have episode on that, but like it's like if you're asking like a really broad question to your manager, do you have any feedback for me, right? Like that's too broad. That's like almost like a lazy question, right? Like if you want to get like a more direct, and I'm not saying this is your case, Laura, just to make sure.
We don't know the details.
Uh,
That's
is
okay.
yeah, I don't really know the details, but you need to ask really powerful feedback questions. And the power feedback questions are more, you just did something. Let's say you just presented to you the other engineers about the architecture you have. The right time to ask is like to your manager, right? Like, okay, like what did you think about my presentation? Was it helpful? Do you think it was structured? Do you think that that was like productive to my level, right? Is like is you have to tailor your questions towards something concrete. I think that's so powerful. And I think like the other thing is like if you want a more broad feedback from your manager, also important to go back and figure out what are the core dimensions of your career ladder, right? And then you ask more concrete, oh, if you, let's say, I like, let's say that on your career ladder, it has something that like senior engineers should have like a high ownership, right? Then you kind of like ask your manager, oh, I have been the tech lead of this project. How you think was my ownership? Do you think I was like more kind of like raising the problems and kind of like asking you to answer them? Do you think that I was owning that and actually trying to find the solutions? I think like, and I think like a lot of those feedback questions, they are very kind of like, almost impossible for your manager to give that answer that he or she was
Louder.
giving you.
Yeah,
Kind
louder.
of like, yeah, Laura, should you like just continue doing whatever you're doing? It's like if this manager, after you kind of elaborate a question and have some concrete instance where you did something and you ask on a timely manner, is going to be kind of like very unlikely they will respond that way. And if they do, they're a bad manager. So that's the second thing is if you keep getting that kind of answer, even being kind of like super directional about where you want to go, what you're seeing, what you're doing, and being asking about behaviors and like the impact you had, then is like maybe time to move to a manager that kind of like cares about your career, cares about growth, and you should still be owning your career always. But is if you're not seeing that your manager is as excited as you are about your career growth, or it's like only like there is only one way relationship, right? You're not seeing kind of like interest on the other side. Maybe it's time to move on. But the answer I would say, Laura, like definitely check it out. The Ethan Evans, the Magic Loop has a lot of ideas on that, and I don't think he goes into how to ask for feedback. But I would say the general guidance that I would say is like try to ask better, more specific questions and see if that changes the answer, the guidance your manager is going to give you.
Okay, that's great. That's amazing. All right, so we still have a few more questions here, but I have a very short notice to tell all of you guys here. So let me just show this here. So Java is a non-profit organization that is supported by the associated, right? And so we have now an amazing series of workshops that So Java is doing every month. With all kinds of people, like 3, 4, 5 hours workshops. I do have there's on the workshop side. I do have 2 workshops about growing beyond senior. One is about building a reputation. One is specific about growing beyond senior. That's almost 7 hours of workshop content. So so Java is until 10th, right? Until Saturday the 10th. So Java is in a promotion of 50% discount for the annual association, right? So you get this discount for life, right? So if you want to participate, there's the QR code right there. And there's an important thing. There's a really, really big benefit that right now, if you associate, you get all the workshops already given in the past, right? It's starting next week. It's starting Sunday. You only going to get the workshops that are going forward, right? So if you really want to have access to all the, there's like hours and hours and hours of material already there. So if you don't have access to everything, go right now, click on the link on your screen and associate at So Java. So there's a couple of questions here that we want to talk about. So you just mentioned here about the need to ask for feedback, right? So Andres has a specific question about that. He says we need to ask for feedback on the aspects that we are interested of instead of just asking how I could improve. So can you give an example, Thiago, like a specific example on how we can ask for feedback? Because feedback is so
Yes,
hard,
yes,
right?
yes,
It's
yes.
so hard to give feedback, to receive
Yeah,
feedback, to ask for feedback.
yes, 100%. I think Andreas, you nailed that. Like, I think like I mean, you should lead the way, right? I mean, I'll try to give an example, but I think like the way you frame actually made me think about something that like sometimes you have to go first, and I think that might actually answer Danilo's question. That's the next one. There is like what I mean by that is like sometimes you have to offer some critique of yourself to then like put someone on a comfortable spot, right? Like for example, like let's say that you are a senior engineer and want to become a staff, and the top skill you're trying to improve is mentorship, right? And your manager has, let's say, like your manager, you report to your manager, and the same manager also has some other junior engineers, right? Let's say that are reporting to them, and you kind of like the beginning of the cycle, as I said, right, beginning of the half, you align or going to mentor those 2 people, right? The question that you're going to ask is like, so I have been mentoring person X over the last 3 months. I did do this, like we're doing like I don't know, like we're going chapter by chapter on the designing data intensive application books, and I'm helping this person to understand databases and like Kafka and all those things. Have you seen any improvements on how they, I don't know, like they act on, let's say, incidents on, or how they're able to solve problems on their own over the last 3 months as their manager? That's a very specific question. It's like you're connecting expectation you had with something you did with like what is their perception, and you can offer some critique first. Like, oh, and you can even say, if you want to go even one step further, you can even say, I have seen that person now able to do X and Z, but they're still struggling with X, right? Is that is that the same thing? What else do you think I should focus to improve my mentorship abilities to help that person to be more successful, right? Like you can even like be transparent. That's the structure approach I'm using for mentor that person. Like, do you have any other ideas, any other skills, any other areas that this person is struggling? What are the feedback that they have from other peers, right? I think that's a very, very concrete example. So I think like that check almost all the boxes. It's like you're kind of like asking very specific time to expectations or areas that are interesting to you. And of course, like I think like there might be cases where you want to ask more broad questions. You want to ask like you want more general feedback, right? And there are multiple ways to ask for general feedback. One way is tie that to a particular situation, a particular project, a particular week, a particular meeting, a particular deliverable, right? In some ways, it's just like a particular cycle, right? And that's what a lot of us do, right? And if your manager is not giving you direct feedback, you can always ask your peers. Most companies is highly encouraged that you not only wait your manager to give feedback, you're collecting feedback from your peers. There is like HR system or even over Slack, ask them like based on their experience working with you, where they see that you could improve. And you can even ask for feedback for your most junior engineers or even engineers at one level above from you, right? Or that you have interacted, right? So I think like that's the beauty of feedback. And the better, like if you're not getting enough engagement or enough, let's say, meat on the feedback, try to go like one, two, three levels down. Like, and if they don't actually give you something meaningful, offer some critique on what you think, like what is your self-reflection as. Do you think my self-diagnosis, my self-reflect is actually right? And they will likely, very likely, be able to give some guidance. Have seen rare cases where when you ask super specific feedback and you're able to kind of like to go that down that level, they are not going to have anything to share with you.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so there's a couple more questions here, but before I go for the questions, let me just say some praises here, right? So Andre saying awesome talk insights. Thank you so much, Thiago. That's great. Laura says awesome. Thank you for answering. I'll try to improve my questions and we read the loop article. Thanks, Laura. That's great. There's a couple more people here. That's some more praise. Now, Igor says, my question has been quite well answered, right? So thanks a lot, Igor. All right, so we do have the Igor's question here that I think you already mentioned it on the talk itself, but I think I'm going to give you a chance for you to answer specifically what he asked here. He says here that thank you for the valuable sharing. Once you notice that your peers and leaders are taking you as a reference, right? What is the best way to approach your superiors in order to negotiate for a better position, right? So when it's time for you to ask for a promotion or for you to ask for a raise or something like this, when should we do that?
That's a great question to ask. Like, when is the perfect time to ask for a promotion or asking for a raise, right? I would say it's like okay. So I would say like there is like off cycle and on cycle promotions, right? Like I think like or raises, right? Like I think like one thing that I would say is if you know how the performance calibration of your company works, if you know how the promotion cycle works, is usually not like on the week before, right? Or not on, even on the month before. It's like a great way to say that is like you can like the same way that I said, like the more specific the question, the better. I think that's also important for promotions or raises, whatever it is. And you can frame that way. Let's say at the beginning of the cycle while you're writing your expectations or you're collecting feedback from the previous cycle, right? You can say, hey manager, I'm kind of like collected all this feedback. I kind of like am thinking about doing those things in the next cycle, A, B, and C, and I'm actually looking at the career ladder, and I think I'm kind of like already there. What do you think? Do you think that if I do those things based on the feedback I got from my peers or even superiors, other ICs that are more senior than I, do you think that we should be able to build a case together for my promotion by so and so day, by June 2025? Uh, I think that's a very powerful, and you're tying that back to evidence. I think it's like you're not asking for a promotion out of nowhere. You're not kind of like just saying, can I be promoted? You're kind of like you're giving evidence, like is like you're telling the things that the areas that you think you're already checking the boxes or already kind of like at that level of impact, you're already doing all those things. You're tying to some feedback and you're saying, not only I have done that past cycle, but I'm actually targeting something that is next level already for us to then build the case for my promotion bid cycle. I'm saying this for promotion, right?
Hmm.
But I think like this is also true for raises. But I think like if the conversation is, or you have a competing offer or something, that might be different. But I think the promotion conversation, and you have to remember this, like promote. Most companies do lagging promotions. I don't know if you heard about this. Like there is like leading promotions and lagging. It's rare the company that's going to be leading promotions, meaning that they're going to promote you to the next level before you're actually already doing close to, I don't know, 80, 90% of the next level job, right? Without actually having the title. So when you target a promotion, actually going to be one cycle, sometimes two, lagging on that. So you're going to feel that, yes, I'm already kind of like performing as a staff, but I still have a senior title.
Hmm.
That's by design in most companies. So, and then it's all about evidence, collecting a case, building like enough like staff projects, enough impact. That's like it's almost going to be inevitable for someone to say, "Oh, that's not staff level," right?
Hmm.
And but I mean, I know there are other kind of like challenges that might come into play with like in the organizations that are not as straightforward as I say, the super political environments, right? But I would say like this would be a very effective way of like negotiating a promotion and building a case for a promotion, being super specific about kind of that. You can even start career growth is really important for me. I know it should be for the company because and I have been doing kind of like everything that is being possible and you can see my impact here and there. Is that something realistic, right? And then on the off cycle promotions, I think that that will vary a lot, but I think is kind of like often like tying back to impact, tying that is a lot more powerful to ask for a raise when you have a competing offer, right? If you have like, it's really hard to get, let's say, a raise if you don't have anything meaningful, concrete. But still, like if you are top talent, if you're someone that's performing well, is like is all about asking because they know you already have, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but I would say the conversation has to be similar to that, right? But of course, you're not targeting a promotion cycle. You're more kind of like you're like evaluating against the market. It's always great to get some data points to get like when you're asking for a raise, you're not asking out of the blue, kind of like you kind of have to tie it back to some data points. Like, oh, I did some research and I'm seeing my salary based on how long I have been on the level, how I've been performing. It's kind of on the low end, like based on do you think there is any room for me to for us to try a off cycle raise or to wait to the next cycle, even though I cannot be promoted, to actually have a better recognition for me to be more motivated to be here. I mean, there are different ways to phrase that, but is yeah, something like that. I would say.
Right. Cool. So there's like a in the same breath that you're having right now. So Lucas is asking, what is your view on competing offers? Right. So that you
You
start
should leverage
yeah,
that.
you start
Yeah,
mentioning it, right? So
I
yeah.
I mean, I have another talk that I gave maybe 5 years ago, where kind of like one of the principles for career growth, and that is across both managerial and in the IC ladder, is continuous interviewing, right?
Mhm.
The same way that you have been always been developing yourself, learning new skills, is you have been continuously like interviewing with other companies. Like, of course, not all the time, but like let's say once every year, once every 2 years, you should like see that kind of like interview with competitors almost as a insurance policy,
Mhm.
almost in the sense that I want to make sure that if I lose my job, I can get like a similar job offer elsewhere with the skills that I have, right?
Mhm.
Can I make that happen? And sometimes you're gonna have a surprise, right? Is sometimes you're gonna get an offer that's much better than the offer you have at the moment, right? And that's called leverage, right? That's like, I mean, in my career, I had multiple cases where I was really happy at my job, but I had this philosophy of every other year I have to go back to interviewing mode, and that means a couple of weekends I'm going to be studying, I'm going to be doing some refreshers on whatever like interviews they might be doing. I need to do some rehearsal on like behavior interview, all that stuff. And like I believe it was 2020, I got an offer that was like more than twice what it was making, and it was making I had a really good salary, but and if I had kind of waited the moment that I needed to interview, that would be too late, right?
Mhm.
And it's all about leverage. I mean, like having there is nothing more powerful than having multiple competing offers, right? I think, and the same is true whenever you actually want to transition, change companies. If you can get more than one offer at the same time, I guarantee that I think there is nothing that will give you more leverage to negotiate salary and benefits than that, right? But it's really hard to time that, and like, but I would say like it is something you should do not once, but again every other year. I as a manager, as a staff engineer, is insurance policy on your career value.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so just to complement, I think I totally agree with everything you said there. But just to complement, the whole thing about promotions and even salary growth. Uh, the way I approach this is by making this a continuous conversation. I mean, every time that you have one-on-one with your manager, you're not going to be discussing my promotion every single time, but that should be on the table. You know, every time you talk to your manager, there must be a path for promotion. There must be a path, right? And so you must be reporting back on the things that you discussed in the past and then you're doing, or you should be thinking about what do I need to do. That discussion has to be a continuous discussion, right? So if you don't have that discussion yet, you start. Start tomorrow. Start this week, right? Ask your manager to have a one-on-one conversation and have that discussion before you actually have to have that discussion, right? That discussion should be a continuous discussion, right? And the thing that you said about like the delayed promotion. Yes, people, you get promoted for the things that you already do, right? Very, very rare that the company will promote you to train you, right? You're going to be promoted for the things that you already do. And so Lucas compliments here. He says that he teaches his mentees, this technique, right? And always be job hunting to test the waters. Luis says here, thanks for the insights and for sharing your ideas. I already do some of the things. I'll start putting some ideas in practice. So congratulations, Luis. Now there's one more question here from Danilo. So Danilo says, how do you view the situation when doing the following, using green, yellow, red, and everything is green, right? At the end of the quarter, yet your manager gives you negative feedback, right? So, what is this
Yes,
that some managers always want to give only negative feedback? There's never a positive feedback. That happens, right?
that happens, I would say, but like I think like the one thing about like, oh, everything is green, and then yeah, there is a negative feedback, and like, and sometimes it's like is there is this idea that kind of like sometimes you're able to achieve all your OKRs or your goals, right? You're able to kind of like to make all the numbers, but how you got there, it was not, let's necessarily good for the future, right? Like, for example, you're able to deliver a project kind of like making everybody work weekends and nights, right? Like as a manager. Like if that manager is being evaluated, the project was delivered on time, all good, green, right? But if you don't look like underneath what actually took to make that, and how much stress it created, how much kind of like that is not going to be sustainable. And when you say kind of like, oh, you have all your OKRs or your expectations on green, and yet you get some negative feedback, I think the question that I would have, I believe, Danilo, right, would be, is the negative feedback related to the how you achieve that, or is something else, right? And it's like, if it is something else, why was that not as a development area on your expectation at the beginning of the cycle, right? Or why that manager was waiting to give the negative feedback only on the performance cycle and not during one-on-ones, not and the other thing I would say, the expectations writing is not something you do once in January and then you're done in June. Like every time you do a checkpoint, you should be asking the question is like, are those expectations, are those staff projects that I have, is still the most important things? Is still aligned with what the organization is expecting of me, right? And is there anything new that appear in terms of my behavior, on how I do things, on how I operate, that should be added here as like a critical area for development, right? And the last thing I would say is like, it's not only your manager that is going to be critical. You have to be critical to yourself. And one thing that I often ask is like, not only ask your manager to do the green, yellow, red assessment, you should also do in your side. And it should be based on like what we discussed at the beginning of the cycle and what I would expect us to be now. I think I'm on yellow here, I'm on red here, right? And it's a lot easier to get your manager to speak if you're opening up the conversation. A lot of managers, and I have been there, uh, sometimes will avoid giving feedback because the times they try to do that, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of justification. It was not really open dialogue. And of course, as a manager, your responsibility to give feedback no matter what. But I think like as an engineer, as I see, opening up to feedback, how you receive the feedback, the same way how you ask, how you receive the feedback is also super important. Because if you have, let's say, a bad reaction or feedback, that is going to create friction for someone to give feedback to you again, right? And that's true for managers and as well as peers, right? If you're able to receive feedback from peers in a nice way and like welcome them, thank them, they are going to feel more comfortable to do that again, right? And that's why I say like often self-criticizing your work and offering some pointers is a great way to start. It's not that you should be kind of harmful to yourself, but you need to make sure, and if they see that you're being like aware of where you are, they're often going to be able, yeah, that's right, maybe there is also this, you're going to be able to add to your point. So I think I would say all those things. I don't know if that helps, but it's like often something is usually a symptom of some other problem when that happens.
That's awesome, man. That's amazing. So I think we get all the questions right. If there's any more questions, people still have 1 minute here. So I'm just gonna let you guys know one last time. This is the engineering advice you didn't know. No, you didn't want to ask, right? Uh, and so
You didn't ask for. You
Oh,
didn't
you
ask.
didn't ask for. So okay, so engineer advice you didn't ask for. Sorry. So engineer advice you didn't ask for. So if you want to have advice you did not ask for, don't forget to check. There's a lot of great episodes there, a lot of great material. Many of the things that he discussed in here, they're like full length episodes, going deep on those things, right? So make sure that you go there, and also remember that it's this week is the last week for you to join so Java with the special benefits, the special price, and the special access to past material. Really, really important. If you're here in Brazil, right? I mean, I know there's lots of people from outside. You might not be interested in Portuguese content, right? But if you're here in Brazil, so Java is the largest. Java is a group in the country, one of the largest in the world. We participate in the JCP. We help define the future of Java, and you can be participating on this. We have special calls and special discussions only for members, right? So go there, and it's right now it's 15 reals a month, right? And if you pay for the whole year, you still get 2 months for free. So that's very very easy to join in if you want to. All right, so that's up for me. Thiago, thanks so much, man. It's a huge
Thank you, Bruno.
to have you here with us. You have been, you went over and above, not only go with all your presentation, but you're here for over 2 hours already, right? And going
It's
in
been a pleasure,
all the
man, and
questions.
thank you.
So that was totally amazing, man. Thanks so much.
Same, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, and thanks in the name of the community of everything I've been doing for the Java community over the years, Bruno. It's
Yeah,
a huge, huge pleasure, and thank you for all the questions. And the last thing I was gonna say is, if you have more questions, follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm open, have open DMs, and I'll be glad to exchange messages and to bounce my ideas with you all. Thank you so
perfect.
much.
Perfect. And Thiago has, as a parting gift almost, right? He put here a link for an old article where he talks about this continuing interviewing. So I'm putting the link on the chat, right? So take a look, and I can also even show it here. Continuous interviewing is it's an important process, right, for you to be always up to date and make sure that you don't miss opportunities. Okay. Uh, um, so I subscribe. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So thanks, Andres. All right. Okay, guys. So thanks so much, Thiago. Once more, thanks so much. Thank you for being here with us. We could
Thank
never
you.
have those amazing people coming here if you don't show up, if you don't ask questions. And one thing that I love about this group here, Thiago, is that they are very very eager to ask questions and participate. And I think it's amazing, right? So thanks so much, everyone. It was amazing to have you all here. Again, Thiago, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.